Anyway, let's talk about freedom of speech being taken away. No, I'm actually dead serious. That's not a joke. This is actually a thing that they're doing. And by they, I mean the United States Supreme Court. Because anytime you say they, you need to actually, like, say who the they is. And, yeah, no, the United States Supreme Court. That's who it is. That's who the they. What? Who? What? Oh? Yeah, so, freedom of speech is being able to put artwork in the Discord. This one's from Mathematical Cabbage. And the rest was done by Dorito, one of my mods on the Cardsmith site. We have a Sarah Net coin. This is a trading card that doesn't really exist. Why is it from Strixhaven? Anyway, that's enough of that. Thank you for fan art. I'm gonna get into what's happening here, and you know what? Just to fact check me, we're gonna go over to Snopes. The United States Supreme Court has effectively abolished the right to protest. Probably. Let's take a look and see what it is. So here's the key points. A police officer was severely injured when a protester threw a projectile during a 2016 Black Lives Matter protest in Baton Rouge. The officer sued the protest's organizer, DeRay McKenson, for damages. McKenson argued that the officer's lawsuit violated his First Amendment rights, since he did not encourage violence explicitly. However, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, with jurisdiction over Texas, let the lawsuit proceed. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. Okay, so there's levels to this, right? There's 3 types of ways that a person can end up engaging in violence on behalf of another, outside of, like, you paid somebody on the dark web. There's the stochastic level, where you say, oh, wouldn't somebody rid me of this meddlesome politician? And then, you know, somebody goes and does that, and that's stochastic terrorism. Somebody died, and it was random, and they randomly took the advice from you. And our government seems to be basically okay with stochastic terrorism, because it's not considered incitement of violence. Yay! But then there is what goes on here, where you have a protest, and you don't say, break those windows, and you don't say, hurt those people, and you don't do any of that. But people end up engaging in the violence anyway. So then you end up asking yourself, should the person who organized the protest be responsible for any violence that random people come up on? And then you start coming into edge cases and going, oh, wait a minute, hold on a minute, hold on a second. What if a random person, like, say, a police officer, infiltrates your protest and then starts engaging in violence in a way that is staged, but still enough to be a problem? And then because mob mentality is a thing, other people start following it as well. The person who's actually responsible for this would be the person who infiltrated your group. But according to this, in this situation, they want to get the person who organized the protest in trouble instead. This is a really good way to make it to where you can't organize protests at all. Because what happens is you organize a protest about a thing you care about. Like, let's say you want to unionize. And so you organize a protest against the Walmart to do the unionizing. And then the Walmart sends in a scab in the middle of your group. And that person decides that they're going to start some shit. And then a couple of the less mentally fortunate people in your group that is engaging in this particular protest and or strike decide they also want to engage in a little bit of tomfoolery, as it were. Now, when they do this, if the strike organizer is the one responsible, all Walmart ever has to do, or really anybody who you're protesting against ever has to do, to shut anybody up who is trying to protest against them, is just have a sacrificial lamb, or a person that they're paying off enough to be the sacrificial lamb, go in and fuck up the protest a little bit. As opposed to getting a whole bunch of people to counter-protest, as opposed to getting a whole bunch of people to, you know, fight against this in a news media battle, all you have to do is have one person destabilize the protest a little bit, and then you get two things that happen. With this type of law, you get the ability to then take the person who organized it, which only so many people can do that because leadership ain't a quality everybody's got. You get to take that person down. And then at the same time, there's a wonderful two-for-one that happens. You get to tell the media that the people who were engaged in the protest were all violent extremists, and they are all bad. And then, when the news finally gets out that actually you planted somebody in there and screwed it all up for everybody, by that time, it's no longer hot and trending news. Nobody cares anymore. So, what happens? You get screwed. You get screwed 12 ways from Sunday, as long as you're not, you know, the person who is doing the screwing of you. Which is not great. That's just not great in any way, shape, or form. Also, my thing screwed up for a second. That's cool. I appreciate that. I appreciate when things just stop working on stream. It's my absolute favorite. So this is how Black Bloc works? Yeah. So, let's continue here in the article. Mackensen appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which declined to accept the case because its own ruling in 2023 already reaffirmed that under the First Amendment, a lawsuit must show active intent, not just negligent behavior. In refusing to hear the case, the Supreme Court also allowed the lawsuit to proceed. Headlines and online chatter about the Supreme Court's decision claimed the idea that organizers in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi can be sued for the actions of protesters, effectively abolishing protests in those states, and this is misleading. I'd argue it's somewhat misleading, but no. The First Amendment still protects your right to assembly, and any lawsuit brought against a protest organizer would have a clear hurdle in decisively proving direct intent to harm. So this is one of those times where a brick is being moved. Your ability to engage in free speech in the United States is based on a series of things that can all be taken away from you bit by bit, so long as the Supreme Court, or whoever happens to be in charge at the time with those particular rulings, is able to establish some precedent. If the Supreme Court can establish enough precedent that, hey, we're going to start getting people on the line for negligence, then the one benefit is maybe we would have one more line in the sand that is drawn against stochastic terrorism. But that's what happens in a just world. In the real world, what ends up happening is instead, people end up losing the right to protest effectively because you can't have a protest organizer. Protests don't happen magically. They don't happen randomly out of nowhere. They happen because a group of people decide that a thing needs to change, and then that group of people figure out who's going to lead the protest, or if a group of people will lead the protest. These things either happen bottom up or top down, but they very rarely happen randomly and organically. As a result, making it to where you always have to have somebody who's willing to basically be in the scapegoat position is a little fucked. If you end up changing things to the point where people have to, I don't know, find some way to always have a scapegoat ready every time they need to talk about a protest happening, then people stop wanting to be engaged in your organization at all. What do I mean by that? So, you only have so many people in an organization that can organize a protest, because you only have so many people who are qualified to have positions of leadership in order to do so. And then those people who are only so qualified to have those positions of leadership in general, then find themselves in this weird spot where they are on the hook for anything, stupid Goobus McGee does in the middle of the protest. Or that one guy who's only been paying his dues on time, all the time, for like 4 weeks. And, it's really strange. Because most everybody else in the union probably doesn't pay their dues. Not at least not on time. I mean, that's usually how you find the Fed in the union. But that person goes there and then destabilizes things a little bit somewhat, and then suddenly you're on the hook there. So you end up having to ask yourself, is it worth it to be an organizer of these protests, or is it too much of a risk for you if stuff like this ends up going through? And if the latter is true, if it is not, if the risk to you is too great, then you have to find somebody within the union who is of much less importance that can be considered the scapegoat organizer. And if you have to keep on doing that, there's only so many people who are willing to put themselves on the line, as opposed to just trying to operate within the bread and circus' status quo. I know that a few people have covered this and been a little more extreme about it, but I'm sorry. This is a possible brick being pulled in favor of removing free speech. It is not yet an abolishment of free speech and ability to protest. And like I pointed out, there are even some strategies that can be used to circumvent the worst of stuff like this, but there's only so often you'll be able to use those kind of strategies before, you know, it starts backfiring on your corporation, company, union, or whatever it happens to be you're organizing at or under. So don't let people tell you that the sky is falling, but also have a backup plan in case it is. That's the smart thing to do. Your freedom of speech is possibly under threat. It is not a guarantee yet, however, but it is still worrisome. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Very, very short one. Very, very easy and simple getting into the nuts and bolts of this. I did think about going into the Vox article that started this one itself, but I figured just going into the fact check as well to look at the points, it seemed to be more than enough for what was going on. If not, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and insert in the video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Nixie-chan, the Oberon team, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.